Cup 3 has just ended. If you guys have been following the tournament scene, all the pro players for both regions, we got a lot going on, okay? We got a lot going on. So I wanted to do like a quick little look at kind of like the meta and where we're at. I think it'd be a fun thing to do. So courtesy of Mr. Lika and Dressvar, he has hooked it up with some stats from Cup number 1, from Cup number 3 in Europe and Cup number 3 in North America. So that's exactly what we're going to do right now. We got these fun little, oh, let me see this. We got these screenshots here. Open a new tab. Okay, so this is, we got two things. We got War Within Season 1 Cup number 3 North America, the War Within Season 1 Cup number 3 in Europe. Okay, so we've got a bunch of stats. What we're going to be going over today in both regions is what melee are popular, what ranged are popular, what healers are popular, what races are popular for PvP, and what comps have been seemingly doing the best. Okay, so we can start off in Europe. I also want to talk about some of the key differences between the two regions because I do think that that is really interesting as well. So the War Within Season 1 Cup 3 Europe. Let's start off by looking at the top specs. Okay, so in Europe, the top specs were Frost Mage, and I think this is from on broadcast. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is only from on broadcast, what we saw in the top 8. So it's not everything that we saw in the open bracket, but it is what we saw in the top 8. So top specs, we got Frost Mage. This is Europe, Frost Mage number 1. We saw a lot of like Tessia and Raikou, as well as, I'm blanking. Tessia, Raikou. Why am I blanking? What's his name? Elsewave, thank you. Elsewave playing it. So some people are really preferring playing that Frost Mage right now. It's super good. No doubts about that. Discipline Priest, still a lot of popularity. Pharaoh Druid, I think in both regions was by far the most popular melee. Yeah, so Pharaoh Druid's looking really good. Holy Paladins, Subtlety Rogues, Affliction Warlocks were a little bit of a surprise. It was mostly just Chanimal playing it, but didn't do too bad over in Europe. We saw a little Outlaw, a little bit of Windwalker Monk, pick up some wins. Elemental Shaman pick up some wins. Balanced Druid pick up some wins. Prez Evoker was actually played. 3 wins, 8 losses, not looking so good. And then we saw some teams experiment with some specs, but it just didn't look good. You know, Ret Paladin didn't win a game. Arms Warrior didn't win a game. Unholy Death Knight didn't win a game. Vengeance Demon Hunter didn't win a game. Survival Hunter didn't win a game. And Holy Priest didn't win a game. However, one thing to keep in mind, okay, this data isn't just like what classes are good and bad. This is the tournament players in the top 8. Because to even make it to the top 8, you have to be winning. Like Holy Priest, for example, Zenilin playing it, made it to the top 8. Actually, in the top 6. So even though he didn't win on broadcast, he still did okay to get there. Top classes looking like Pharaoh Druid and Discipline Priest. Mages as well with a really, really good win-loss, which is kind of a stark contrast to what we'll see in North America. And then just games played. You saw Druids 49 games played. Disc Priest 42 games played. Mages 32. Rogue 27. Paladin, it's all pretty much all Holy Paladin 21. And then it kind of goes down from there. With some specs really just not seeing anything. Top comps in Europe were the Disc Feral Frost and Paladin Feral Frost. Really good composition overall. But ultimately it was Echo that won, playing Disc, Sub, Affliction, and RMP. And big surprise is seeing some Boomkin actually do okay. Now, as a little bit of a contrast, when you look at North America, you're not seeing as many mages. Kind of crazy, actually. So in North America, like in Europe, you're seeing no Shadow Priest do well. And in North America, it's all Shadow Priests and no mages. It's just like a completely different story. So like in North America, the top comps were Holy Paladin, Feral Priest. That was the comp that won. Then we saw F tier, kind of the runners up. They're playing a lot of Windwalker, LE Paladin. Then we saw Shadow Play do really well. And then we saw, Affliction Warlock, Subtlety Rogue, Discipline Priest. And I don't know why that is. I don't know why like people aren't invested in Frost Mage at all. Frost Mage is super good. I don't know if it's necessarily better than Shadow Priest from what I've seen, but it's definitely really good. And it's interesting that no teams are really investing in Mage at all. Why is that? I would really like to see like these top European teams play against the top NA teams with like Shadow Priest versus Frost Mage and who comes out ahead. another really stark contrast here is look at the top races in Europe. So in Europe, everyone's playing Night Elf. 86 games as Night Elf, and in NA, 64 games as Orc. It's probably because you can't be a Night Elf. Can you be a Night Elf priest? You can't. You can. Yeah, you can definitely be a Night Elf priest. It's weird. That's another one that's kind of interesting. Yeah, yes, you can, of course. Okay, so top specs in Europe or in North America, Holy Paladin coming out ahead by far. Discipline Priest pretty far behind. So that's one key difference between the two regions. North America greatly preferring that Holy Paladin, and in Europe they're greatly preferring the Discipline Priest. We're seeing Shadow Priest played way more. Feral still by far the most popular melee in both regions. Affliction Warlock being played a good amount. It looked not bad at all. Ellie Shaman, I think, is a little bit slept on right now. The one thing about Ellie Shaman that I think is interesting is when I was talking to one of my friends that plays in the tournament. I don't know. I'll just leave him anonymous for now. But he was basically saying one of the problems with Ellie is it doesn't have like that oomph kind of win condition, you know? Where like in dampening, you just have like a button that just wins you the game. Ellie Shaman doesn't really have that. So in like this kind of like damp meta where you basically just want to pop a huge cooldown deep in dampening, Ellie Shaman doesn't have that same kind of thing, I guess, allegedly. It doesn't have like an Icy Veins or like a big Psy Fiend or anything like that. But I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. But yeah. So I would say like it seems to me that kind of like the top specs right now, when you cross-reference the two regions, the top specs in the game right now for melee are Rogue and Feral. I think there's absolutely no question about that. For healers, it's Disc and HPAL. For caster DPS, I think you could make a good argument for Frost Mage, Shadow Priest, and Affliction as kind of the best caster specs in the game. Is there anything I'm missing? This seems like the upper echelon of like the best comps, right? Don't say rogue, say sub. Well, some people actually played outlaw and did okay. And I think like maybe like a little bit of a tier below, you have Windwalker monks. Windwalker monks are okay, and Ellie seem okay as well. It seems like they can kind of put up a fight against some of these meta specs. Maybe like hunters too. BM hunters. Hunters I think are decent. Hunters. Yeah. Is there any other healer that's kind of like in contention? Warriors sure are horrible. Yeah, I really, dude, it's so funny to me because when we were looking at all the changes that came in, I was convinced that Warriors would be good. I was like, man, Warrior buffs are crazy. Like, we're definitely entering a Fire Mage Warrior meta. That didn't work out. Definitely didn't work out. So I was 100% dead wrong on that one. And yeah. Like, I think some of the biggest letdowns for the tournament were probably Fire Mage. I think Fire Mage isn't that bad, but it's just a worse version of Frost in every way. And I still think Warrior isn't bad, but Feral just gaps it. Feral's just better. I think one of the big things about Feral Druid that makes it so strong is the durability is really good. I didn't actually know this. I learned yesterday that Feral Druids have a PvP talent called King of the Jungle, where I think it's every rip they have up gives them 5% more healing, stacking up to 4 times. So pretty much the whole game, they're getting 15 to 20% bonus healing, which is kind of insane. Like really, really, really insane. And then they also just have Incarn. Incarn is just so ridiculously good that they just have that kind of all-in win condition of like unhealable damn. But rogues are also good, disc priests are good, H-Pals are good, Frost is good, Shadow Priest is good, Affliction is good. And I think this is kind of like, these are the S tier specs right now. And then these are like, for tournament play. For tournament play, I think these are like the S tier specs. I don't think there's many people that are going to disagree or argue about that. Funny part is it's been around and used all of Dragonflight as well. Crazy how things change. Well, yeah. I mean, mechanics, that's what's interesting, right? Like, things like King of the Jungle have been around for a really long time, but they just become OP when you're good, I guess. It's like, it just puts it over the edge. You have, like, this really, really OP mechanic, and then it just gets, like, kind of put over the edge. You think the meta will change? Yes. I think there will be massive change. Like, the 20th anniversary patch I think things will absolutely change. I think there's some specs that could easily rise to the top. I think we'll see a lot more Mistweaver Monk, I hope. You know, things like Enhancement Shaman are getting a big rework. So things could definitely change with that. But I kind of just, if you guys have been watching the tournaments, I don't think anyone's going to argue that this is just like, this is what the game pretty much is right now. Is these specs. Now, that's not to say that other specs like didn't pick up some wins, because they did. You know, there were some comps we saw that did okay. But by and large, these are the best specs. Just no doubt about that in my mind for 3v3. No doubt about that at all. And pretty much all the top comps that were doing well is just a mix of these classes. These melee, these ranged, these healers. It's pretty much everything. And then this is like, you know, a little sketchier, but still good, yeah. But yeah, I think for Cup number 4, it's going to be a very similar story since there's no PvP changes coming. Very, very similar story. And then we're getting that huge 20th anniversary patch before we go into like the finals, the open bracket and the finals and stuff like that.